Welcome back. If you saw the first video in this series, then you know that I've been looking at how Genshin characters would function in the gameplay style of Star Rail. Today we're doing the opposite. If the crew of the Astral Express landed in the world of Teyvat, how might they function? Let's start with the star of the show, the Trailblazer.
Reach the end of the story in your own way.
Rules are made to be broken.
Like the Traveler from Genshin Impact, the Trailblazer can take on multiple forms, although only 2 have been currently released. The first one we gain access to sees our resident trash panda armed with a bat and following the path of destruction. As you know, Genshin Impact has playable characters using 1 of 5 weapon types and possessing 1 of 7 elemental visions. The physical element in Star Rail doesn't have a direct comparison, so I'm going to have to get a little creative here. The closest parallel I can gather is that of Geo, since hitting someone with a rock is sort of like physical damage, right? I could see a bat being depicted as either a sword or claymore, but I'm going to go with sword since it's still a one-handed weapon. The Destruction Trailblazer has a very simple moveset, focusing on knocking their foes silly with their bat. Despite being made a Geo unit, I don't see the Amnesiac utilizing its power very often. After all, their original playstyle focused on physical damage. In fact, Genshin does utilize physical damage, it's just not highly sought after due to the sheer power of elemental reactions. With this in mind, I've decided to make them play a little bit like Eula, since she happens to be a physical DPS in Genshin. Thus, the Trailblazer's skill primarily serves to generate a shield via elemental reactions, and that's kind of about it. Speaking of reactions, the equivalent system in Star Rail would be the weakness break mechanic. Being a physical unit, the Trailblazer is able to inflict bleed, a damage over time effect. I've included this in their elemental burst. Using Stardust Ace gives the Trailblazer a special state, not unlike Noelle's burst. While in this state, their normal and charged attacks become more powerful. Also, striking a foe will inflict them with a bleed status effect, which will periodically deal physical damage. Moving on to the Trailblazer's Path of Preservation form. This is a much more defensive unit. Wielding a lance of the power of fire, this translates easily into the systems of Genshin. It would be easy to grind artifacts for this character, since they scale off that dreaded defense stats, like Albedo or Ito. They're all about keeping themselves alive by shrugging off damage. The more the opponent tries to break through the Trailblazer's guard, the more damage they'll be taking, since the Trailblazer simply gets stronger with each hit they take.
You have the worst luck running into me!
Star Rail has not 1, but 2 Amnesiacs. March 7th is a cutie though. Wielding the power of 6-phase ice and a bow, she easily translates into a cryo archer in Genshin. Following the Path of Preservation, she's a support unit who keeps her allies shielded and punishes foes for striking them. A bit of Diona, a bit of Ganyu, and a bit of Layla. What's not to love?
This sanctuary is but a vision! Break!
Our next crew member would fit right into those sad, edgy, windy boys. Dan Heng would definitely be a 4-star Zhao, seeing as how he would also be an Anemo polearm unit. Dan's a highly mobile DPS. If you're able to keep enemies grouped together, then swirl reactions would be quite devastating.
Survive or be destroyed. There is no other choice.
Daddy Welt is the level-headed and somewhat stoic member of the Astral Express. Utilizing the power of black holes and gravity, there's not really anything like it in Genshin. Maybe abyssal power? But we don't truly know how that works yet, and it's certainly not one of the playable elements. The closest parallel I can think of is Dendro, since it has ties to dreams and imagination. As for Welt's weapon of choice, I think Catalyst fits him best, since he projects his attacks through his cane. Welt may be a Dendro unit, but he feels more like an Anemo one thanks to his powerful CC. His burst functions a lot like Venti's, in that it pulls enemies close together and keeps them there for a brief period of time. This is to set himself up to make the most out of his skill. Like Baiju's E, Welt's skill launches a Dendro projectile that will bounce between foes several times. The difference here is that there's no healing component. In order to make up for that, Welt's skill can deal significantly higher damage. The attack can bounce between foes a great number of times, but the distance that the projectile can travel between foes is shorter. The same foe can be struck multiple times, but there does need to be at least one other enemy in order to keep that attack bouncing.
Humanity never conceals its desire to control the heavens, and I'm no exception.
The last member of the Astral Express is its navigator, Himiko. Wielding an extraordinarily large pizza cutter, she makes mincemeat of her foes with the element of fire. She's a shoo-in for that classic Pyro-Claymore combination in Genshin. Himiko's kit is pretty straightforward. Deal lots of damage to a large group of foes. The more damage she does, the more powerful she becomes. Pyro reactions are some of the deadliest sources of damage in Genshin, so gaining a damage buff by simply utilizing this gameplay mechanic makes her a force to be reckoned with. A bit of a shorter one, but I think we should go ahead and call it here. Next time, I want to tackle the playable characters of Herta's space station, as well as miscellaneous early game free characters. Let me know what you think of the series, and if you thought I even translated these characters into another game well enough. Until then, may your journey take you starward, and have a blessed day.